What's going on, everybody? I'm Caleb Ochoa, also known as NFL Kid 22, and this is Bet in the NFL. And as always, here with me is my co-host Derek Wesley, also known as DWeezy. What's going on, man?
Man, we here. We here. It's the final weekend of no pro football. I know a lot of people out there, they got their fix because college football was back. People out there cashing bets on skin at the college level. Well, folks, we finally made it through that last weekend, and we're here. Thursday, football. Friday, football. This weekend, football all the way around.
Hell yeah, I'm definitely ready to make some money and make you all money because that is the goal of the show. Is to make you guys money, and that's what we're going to try to do here. But we have been going through all the divisions in the NFL, telling you our best futures bets for each of those teams in each of those divisions, and where do you think how we think they will stack up, and where you should put your money, and that's where we're gonna end off the offseason here today with the NFC South and the NFC East, our two favorite divisions, considering they have our two favorite teams in them. Well, we're going through each team, and we'll be telling you the odds for them to win the division, to make the playoffs, their over under win total, and yeah, and just our overall thoughts and bets at how we like the team. But before we do that, we gotta say what's up to Jay. What's going on? We gotta say what's up, to my dad. What's going
What's
on?
up, fellas?
And yeah, like Jay said, it's football, baby. Let's go. Let's make some money.
Exactly. You got to hit your John Madden voice. Boom! It's football.
All right. We will start in the Weezy's division. We'll go. We'll start with the team that has the best odds to win the NFC South, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. They have minus 130 as favorites to win this division. The over under win total is set at 9.5. We'll take a look back at 2023 season where they went 7-10, finished third in the NFC South. They did not make the playoffs. And, it was a not a pretty season for them, despite a hot 2-0 start. They had Desmond Ridder as quarterback. He struggled through a lot of points in the season. They did not score a lot of points throughout the season. They did not score 30 points all season long. And because of that, since Arthur Smith's supposed to be the offensive guy, he got
Even my
fired.
Panthers got 30 in one game.
Yeah, yeah. That led to the head coach's firing, and then the eventual hiring of Raheem Morris. And then in this offseason, they did add a few guys. They traded for Matt Judon. They signed quarterback Kirk Cousins. They signed receiver Darnell Mooney and safety Justin Simmons. They did lose though. They traded away Desmond Ritter. They lost tight end Johnny Smith, running back Cordell Patterson, linebacker Bud Dupree, defensive end Calais Campbell, center Matt Hennessy, and receiver Matt Collins. But in the draft, they take in round one quarterback Michael Penix. In round two, they take defensive lineman Rook Oro out of Clemson, and in round three, they take edge Braylon Trice out of Washington. So how do you think the Falcons' odds are to win this division, to make the playoffs, and uh, do they go over 9.5 wins?
Well, I definitely think when we're talking about the Falcons, on paper, yes, you have to put them as the odds on favorite to win the division. Now, I do think it's a bit shocking to see a minus number like we're looking at, roughly around minus 130, minus 135, depending on what book you're shopping at. Um, just simply because the sporadic nature that has been the NFC South. Um, last year everybody was talking about the Saints running away with this division, and clearly that was not the case. Um, Coming into this year, it's been a very similar storyline to the Falcons that we've heard. And as I said, on paper, yes, this would definitely have to be the favorite to win the division. When you start to break things down, though, it does leave a lot of questions that make you wonder a little bit about what this team is going to do throughout the season. As far as that win total at 9.5, I couldn't touch the over. I'm not saying that I'd necessarily jump on that under, but just with too many questions around this team, you don't know what you can truly get out of some of the offensive weapons in place. Like I said, on paper, you expect a Kyle Pitts, a Drake London, a Bijan Robinson to basically explode on the scene, because in the past few years, it seemed like it was coaching that was holding them back. And so coming into this season, there's definitely a lot of questions around those players. And yes, in most situations, you like to see a team that had a need at quarterback bring in a veteran quarterback that's a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the league. Unfortunately, it was Kirk Cousins, Mr. Non-prime time. Like, I'm not sure that helps the scenario when, talking about trying to place a bet on this team to potentially win the division. The fact that you're staring at that minus.
Oh, did we lose you? I lose him. I'm not sure if DWeezy's still there, or if anybody can tell me if he's still there, or is it me? But we'll get him back soon. But as far as my thoughts on the Falcons, this is another team I want to hedge my bets on. I believe they will be a better team with better quarterback play, but that's the thing on what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins' health. And I think that's the biggest question mark, and that's why I want to hedge my bets, because I do like them to win division if they have Kirk Cousins there. Yeah, okay. So it was DWeezy that went out. All right. So you guys can still hear me. That's great. But we'll get him back soon. Well, as far as the Falcons, yeah, I mean, with better quarterback play, Kirk Cousins gonna definitely help their chances of winning this division. But is he gonna stay healthy? I don't know if he's gonna come back healthy. I don't know how great he's gonna do, and that's why I want to hedge my bets a little bit on this team. I'll take them. I'll put some money on them to win the division, but I also put some money on the plus 215 not to make the playoffs. So it's kind of going both ways. At least you make a profit on the plus number on if things go south with this team. If you take them to miss the playoffs, but you can win a good amount still, since they are the favorite and everything goes well. They probably will win this division at minus 130 to win it. So I can put some money on that as well. And as far as over and under, I like them to go over, because I think they like I said, everything goes well, they can definitely hit that over and get to that 10 wins, especially with the division that they are in. So I like them there. But we'll say real quick. We'll say what's up to Shug. What's going on, man? And yeah, so for the Falcons, put some money to win the division, put some money not to make the playoffs. You hedge your bets a little bit, and also put some money on them to go over the 9.5 win. All right, we'll get to the the team with the second best odds to win this division, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And their odds are at plus 325 to win this division. You can find that at Bally Bet. Their win total is set at 7.5 wins. And we'll go back and take a look at what they did in 2023. And they went 9-8. They were first in the NFC South. They did win a playoff game. Okay, well, we got DWeezy back. All right, you good, man?
Apologies, folks. The heavens decided to open up right as we started playing havoc on the power. So if you happen to lose me, it's not because I don't want to be here. And just to wrap up my points,
Yeah.
Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, sure.
There's still a lot of questions surrounding this team. I do like the hire of Raheem Morris. He's shown to be a good not just coach in general, whether it be as a coordinator, a head coach. I definitely think it's an upgrade there. I just don't have the confidence to take the Atlanta Falcons as a minus number to win the division or to cover that 9.5. Could they potentially be a playoff team? Yes, because of course, if they win the division, they're automatically in. But also that wild card factor. So I could see maybe sprinkling a little bit on the Falcons to make the playoffs. Me personally, I wouldn't see them doing much in the playoffs. Just from a preseason perspective. Now we get some of those questions answered about some of the playmakers on this team. Yes, it could be a 10-plus win team, but as far as making a play now, this is a team I got to stay off of.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was a little mixed on them. I had them, because if everything goes well, I do think they are the favorite. That's why I put a little money on to win it. But like I said, I would hedge my bets and say they won't make the playoffs just to be safe because there is a plus number on them to not make the playoffs. Like I said, I'm kind of with you, mixed on them. And, if things goes right, then they probably will win. But there's too many question marks to really be super confident in the Falcons. All right, but yeah, we were moving on to the Buccaneers because they had the second best odds, and yeah, I think they were a pretty big surprise in 2023. I think a lot of people had them as one of the worst teams, considering Tom Brady had just left, Baker Mayfield was coming in, and you didn't really know how that transition would go. I think we were pretty down on them as well, but they came out pretty hot, going 3-1 to start the season. Then they went up into a little bit of slump in the middle of the season for strong finish to win the division, upsetting the Eagles in the playoffs before falling to the Lions next week. So pretty successful overall season for them. Surprising a lot of people. But in the offseason, they did sign safety Jordan Whitehead, guard Ben Bredesen, defensive tackle Greg Gaines, but they did lose. They traded away Carlton Davis, cornerback, linebacker Shaq Barrett, and linebacker Devin White. In the draft, they took tackle Graham Martin out of Duke. In round 2, they took edge Tyke Smith out of Georgia. In round 3, they took Jalen McMillan out of Washington. But yeah, so what are your the like I said, the line was set at 7.5 wins. So do you think they can go over or under that number?
It's hard to say that the over isn't a possibility here. Now, it being sort of it being another NFC South team, something that will be interesting to look at. There was a lot of weight put in the fact that Dave Canales was accredited with the turnaround of Baker Mayfield. He's no longer there. You can find him in Carolina. Now, is that a benefit for Carolina and a minus for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? That's yet to be seen. But it's not typically the type of news you want to hear when we're talking about a quarterback that, for the most part of his career, has been inconsistent and all over the place. That the wide receiver core in Tampa Bay has been falling off over the past few years. They still have Mike Evans, which I thought was a surprising signing because the way things looked as far as how things were playing out last year, contract negotiations didn't seem to be going well. It seemed like we could see Mike Evans hit the free agency this past off season, and that wasn't the case. I do like Mike Evans on this team. He's definitely a genuine deep ball threat, even, as he's gotten up there a little bit in age. That combination of height and speed and the ability to go up and get the ball definitely can benefit a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. Not having to be necessarily as pinpoint accurate as some QBs may have to be. So do I think, this was a team last year where we probably a number of people out there, maybe even including us, were talking about them as possibly a last place team. The fact that we're seeing, a 7.5, and depending on what books you're looking at, somewhere around, plus 275, maybe closer to 300, depending on the book. Kind of says that the sports books out there aren't high on this team repeating. Now, could that be the history of the NFC South, and just a lack of a repeat division winner? Possibly. But I do think there is something to be said. Um, One, the possibility of losing a coaching piece like we saw in Dave Canales. There's other teams that you can look at across the NFL where it's a similar scenario. Well, a similar question that's being asked. The Baltimore Ravens lost their defensive coordinator from last year. Not to say that their defense is going to automatically just turn to mush, but you wonder how much that coaching elevated some of the players on the roster, how much the schemes helped the roster as far as performing on the field. So, it will be very interesting to see how the offense plays out for this team. In last year and what seems in more recent years, even when Brady was there, they were trying to rely more on the run game. I think that's a possibility that we could see out of this team. Baker Mayfield's been known to operate well from the play action. If I'm not mistaken, outside of last year, one of his best statistical years came in Cleveland when they were running a heavy pass play action based offense, relying on that run game, using play action, getting Baker outside the pocket on the move. And so, you know, will they win the division? I got to lean to the no. Um, you know, Sadly, there's a reason the NFC South is viewed as one of the worst divisions out there at the moment, and I, it's not because there's good teams sitting there. I'd love to be able to say otherwise, seeing as how my team's sitting in this very division. But when it comes to sports betting, you got to be honest with yourself. You can always like your team, you can always back your team, maybe sprinkle a little something just for the hell of it. But it definitely helps having self-awareness, not only when it comes to your team, but your division and any market that you might be potentially looking at. So as far as the over-under on the win totals, like I said, I'd lean to the over, but I definitely don't see this team winning the division. And even at 8 or 9 wins, even at 9 wins, I don't think this would necessarily be a wild card team. I mean, we could possibly see a tie in record as far as division winner, maybe in Atlanta and Tampa, tied at 9 games, coming down to a couple tiebreakers. It would be interesting to see how the wild card picture would shake out in that instance. But I just don't feel that this is a team that's going to make the playoffs with a bit of an aging roster and nothing that really stands out as something that you want to hang your hat on from a preseason outlook.
Yeah, I'm not too high on them either. I don't think everybody was that wrong on them last year. They just they surprised some people, some teams. They got hot when at the right time. They faced Eagles team in the playoffs that was on the complete decline. So they had a little bit of luck last year, and I don't think they'll have that same trajectory that this season. And last season I learned not to bet on Baker Mayfield. He burned me a few times last year, and I'm not going to make that same mistake this season and putting money on him to win this division 2 times in a row. So I won't be doing that. As far as the over under, I'm taking the under. I think they'll be around 6 or 7 wins um, for this team, and which just will not be enough to get to the playoffs. I think like I said, I think they're going to be that team that I thought they were going to be last year. It's just going to happen a season later. I still think they're that good of a team, and Baker's just not that good himself. So ultimately, we'll be a pretty mediocre football team, and that's where I think that's what they'll settle on. That's where I'm going to put my money on. All right. We'll move on to the team with the third best odds, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Um, They are plus 550 to win it. Their over under is set at 7.5. And we'll take a look back at 2023, where they went 9-8. Good enough to be second in the NFC South. They did not make the playoffs, though. It was just an up and down season. All through the year, they would win a couple, lose a couple, win a couple, lose a couple. Pretty much went back and forth for them. They were just kind of an okay team. They were just another team doing stuff, but they never did anything really spectacular about their their offense or their defense. I would say a lot of the losses that they had contributed to the head coach. I've never believed or trusted in Dan Salin. I think that's what got some of their losses. Maybe they could add a better record. But in the 2020 this offseason, they did a trade for John Ridgway. They signed Chase Young. They signed receiver Cedric Wilson and linebacker Willie Gay and safety Will Harris. They did lose. He's then Malcolm Roach, quarterback James Winston, tackle Andrus Peat, and cornerback Lonnie Johnson. In the draft, they took in the first round Talise Fuaga, tackle out of Oregon State, and cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama in round 2. So what do you think they stack up in this division, and do they go over or under that 7.5 win total?
I'm definitely going to be looking to fade the Saints this year. This is a team that I've said that they've been on the downfall for a number of years now. There was a lot of hype around this team when they first brought in Derek Carr. That has seemed to fizzle out for the most part. I don't think you're going to find too many people out there with high expectations on Carr when it comes to this season, and I'd definitely be one of them. Chris Olave is a nice offensive piece. Still young. Wouldn't necessarily use a term like raw, but haven't seen a full season out of him. Will he be able to stay healthy? And but at the same time, I don't think he's not the type of player that can elevate this offense outside of just himself. When you look at the pieces that they brought in and the moves that they've made, there's nothing that really stands out as a main piece, not to say starter, but it's something whether you're looking at the over, you like these couple of players. I just don't see that when looking at this roster. Alvin Kamara has been on the downslide for a few years now. Coaching has been an issue. Defensively, has been an issue at times. At this point, I think Chase Young is not much more than a name. There was a lot of hype around Chase Young when he first came into the league. For a few years there, it looked to be that he could deliver on that hype. And since, I think about that last year in Washington, and since he left Washington, been more so a non-factor. Injuries have been a concern. I'm not sure if he's fully ready for week 1. I think there were some injury concerns with the neck issue. But yeah, this is they lost Cam Jordan to retirement either this year or last year. And overall, I think this is a team, like I said, last year, everybody, all the big name, channels and programs, the Saints are going to win the division. The Saints are going to run away with this thing. How could anybody pick anybody other than the Saints? And it took a lot of hopes and prayers just for them to get to that 9 wins. So, I won't sit here and say they finished dead last. I won't go that far. But I definitely would be looking to fade this team as far as going with the under on the win total. Depending on how much juice you're seeing with a market like to make the playoffs, I definitely would take a peek at that. But yeah, this is a team. they could very well be fighting with the Panthers to see who finishes in last place. And if I can pull it up pretty fast, I'm curious what their number is for finishing in third or fourth place.
Well,
Because, as I said, you at the point that you're talking about, only winning 5, 6 games on the season, maybe less, you're definitely in a position to be fighting for that fourth place spot.
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you on this team. Not very high on them at all. They just didn't make any significant changes to their team. They're basically the same team. They're coming back, and it wasn't that good of a team to begin with. Like you said, they barely got to that 9-win mark, and I don't see them getting even close to that this season. So I'm definitely going to take, because it's plus money on the under at plus 120. So I'm going to take that for the to go under 7.5 wins. I'm definitely going to take, even though it's a minus number, it's minus 170 for no. I still think that's low, still low enough where you can make some money on that. So I'll take the no to make playoffs, and just no shot. There's no shot that they're going to win the division. Well, they could, just because it's like I said, there's change, but um, I just don't see it. I just don't see how this team is any better. So I'm not going to put any money on them to win it.
Yeah, and as I was saying, currently where I'm looking, they got the Saints booked to finish in third place at plus 170, the lowest odds. Second place coming in as far as second on the list, plus 220. And then we see fourth with plus 250. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I think that plus 250 might be a little juicy, because I'd have more concerns about this team finishing in second versus them finishing in fourth. And with the odds being about the same, it might be something that I look to place a little bet on.
All right, Jay says he can't see the Saints succeeding ahead of us, which means the Panthers. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not high on the Saints, but I just, I'm not
Like I said,
we're
it
about to talk
could be
about.
a battle throughout the entire season. Who's going to be that fourth place team?
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure you're going to find a much juicier number on the Saints than you will on the Panthers as I'm scrolling down to them. Yeah, Panthers to finish fourth place, minus 225. Now, I think that's just slightly insulting just a bit. Minus
is it? Is
225,
it?
really?
I
In this
mean,
division? Two minus what?
I mean,
So yeah,
so maybe
definitely.
a little bias on your part.
Like I said, I'm not saying it shouldn't be a minus number, but to have a team like the Saints, who basically they're pricing at third, to finish third at plus 170, and that jump to the Panthers to be minus 225. I don't know about that one.
All right. We'll get to your finally. We'll get to your Panthers, who do have the worst odds to win the division at plus 1,200, which actually is not that bad, considering. But their win total is set at 5.5 wins, and we will go look what they did in 2023. They finished 2-15, fourth in NFC South, did not make the playoffs. They had some promise with Bryce Young with the number one pick overall. They had Frank Reich as head coach, but that kind of all went out the window pretty damn quickly because they fired Frank Reich after going like 0-6. Didn't get a win until week 8. Bryce Young, a little disappointed in his first year, but he's still young, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, it was just pretty much a lack of talent on the Panthers. Not a lot of help for him to really succeed. So put him in tough positions there. And yeah, but in the offseason, they traded for Deontay Johnson, receiver. They signed cornerback Michael Jackson, signed guard Robert Hunt, guard Damian Lewis, and John Robinson. They signed also defensive end Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end DJ Wonnum, and linebacker Josie Jewell. But they did lose. They traded away Brian Burns, linebacker. They released Dante Jackson, cornerback, linebacker Frankie Lubro, defensive end Yatir Gross Matos, and cornerback Shaq Griffin, and safety Jeremy Chen. But they did draft in round 1 receiver Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. In round 2, they took running back Jonathan Brooks, and in round 3, they took Trevin Wallace, linebacker out of Kentucky. So yeah, this is your team. I want to know your thoughts and your chances of hitting that over and maybe making the playoffs.
I gotta fade the making the playoffs part. Now I do think there, at least there's a chance that 5.5 could be in danger as far as the over. As you mentioned last year, Frank Wright did not make it very far through the season as the head coach. Even while he was here, the play calling duties went from him to the offensive coordinator back to him. Then he was fired. There's no telling how many number of voices and different opinions and thoughts were going into Bryce Young's head, because from the sounds of things, it was truly just too many cooks in the kitchen. It's that simple. And when you're talking about a rookie coming into a new, coming into the NFL, new system, new coaching staff, basically a new offense, you need some level of consistency. And that just wasn't there. There was many issues across the offensive line, which was a worry coming into last season. Thankfully, we saw them address that in the offseason. And, it might not always be the flashiest move, but there's a reason why a lot of people believe that you start building your offense from the offensive line. And so having a quarterback potentially already in place, or at least a quarterback that will be put in a situation to see what he can actually do. A few more threats on the offensive side of the ball, bringing in Deontay Johnson, who, yes, had his issues in Pittsburgh. But one thing was for sure when you're talking about Johnson, he does have the ability to separate from defenders. And that was one thing that this offense was greatly lacking last year. A prime example of that, a starter from last year didn't even make it through training camp and preseason this year. TMJ, no longer here. Got cut at the end of preseason. And I think that highlights just how ineffective some of the pieces were offensively. Miles Sanders was possibly the biggest disappointment in 2024 across the NFL. But there is a little bit, of excitement coming into this season because, added some young pieces at wide receiver and running back with Legette and Brooks, who, yes, Brooks will be starting the season on the PUP list. So, it may not look, we may see a different offense towards the end of the year versus the beginning of the year. But this is a running back that, even while injured, many people were saying was the best running back in this year's draft. And so it will be interesting to see what the Panthers can get out of him when he's healthy and back on the field. And as I mentioned earlier, Dave Canales, new head coach, first-time head coach. A lot of people, out there are giving praise for the work he did in Tampa Bay, the work he did in Seattle. With I wouldn't say he revitalized Geno Smith's career, because I do believe some of that, is Geno's doing. It isn't all the coaches. Now, you, as a coach, you're looking to put your players in the best position to make the play. Now, I can't wait for the NFL to go mic up Xavier Legette and just see how many people across the nation can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, Jay says, well, I can't do the accent, but he says, oh, man, I'm just glad to be part of the team. Legette. Yeah, I can't really talk like him. But
I would not be shocked if this man was literally telling DBs what route he was running, and they had no clue what he was saying. That's a beautiful thing, folks. So
It's
Yes,
just a
do
good thing that
look
he's not the
forward.
quarterback calling the plays.
Exactly. Do look forward to Xavier Leggett in press conferences being mic'd up because you don't know what he's going to be saying, honestly. He might be cussing and you just don't know it. There's been great stories in the past where players, a Kobe Bryant who spoke multiple languages and was cussing out refs in game and nobody knew it. Right? So, there is a little bit more excitement around this team coming into this year. Like I said, I do believe, you know, no, 5.5 is a low number. Now, clearly, the books are saying, that there's some improvement over last year because though it's not often that you'll see a number like a 3.5 or a 4.5, but they have been out there before. And so, when talking about a team that won only 2 games the prior season, to put the number at 5.5, you know, I'll lean to that. I'll lean to the over. Now, I'm not bullish enough to put some money on them making the playoffs or winning the division. I do have a 12-1 ticket on a baseball's future that's looking to cash. I do not think that this is a 12-1 ticket on the Panthers division futures that would cash.
Yeah, I mean, 5.5. I mean, they did make a lot of improvements to their team, but anything is improvement over 2 wins. So I'm gonna take the under at plus 125 because it is a plus number. I'm gonna hit it right at 5 games. I mean, that's still a big improvement. That's 3 games better than you were last year. That still shows improvement, but
Hey, I can't blame you. 2 years ago, I was riding hard on the Panthers under win total. At the time, it was 6.5. They brought in Baker Mayfield, and people, oh my God, Baker Mayfield. It moved 1 game. I was still on that under 7.5. And if it wasn't for Steve Wilkes, I would have easily cashed both. So, I definitely I can't complain hearing people looking towards the under and potentially taking the under.
Yeah, and unless you have deep pockets, there's really no point putting minus 550 on no to make the playoffs. Nobody really thinks they're going to make the playoffs. So just I wouldn't even touch that either yes or no because you're not really making much even if you do pick no. But yeah, I mean, not really high enough. Like I said, I do recognize that they did make upgrades in several positions, but you do trade guys like Brian Burns away, so it's still not going to be awesome on that side of the ball. Um, and we got to see. I mean, you got old man Thielen and a rookie receiver.
Hey, old
So
man Thielen was getting them yards and catches last year.
yeah, he was. He was leading the
I'm just
pack,
saying,
but
he you put that old man
yeah,
strength on,
yeah,
Not
and
saying he gonna tear it
it
up for
resulted
16,
in about
17
two
games.
wins. It resulted in about 2 wins. So we'll see what happens this season. But I don't think it's gonna be. Wouldn't get your hopes up for too many wins there. But that'll wrap up our NFC South part of the show. If you have any last bets you want to talk about for the NFC South.
None that I can really think of. Unfortunately, as I've said, there's a lot of questions surrounding this division, and you've said it before, I've said it before. It's consistency that you're looking for, and when you don't have that consistency, it definitely makes it a challenge to, especially with futures bets, where you're talking about literally the entire season having to take place. This isn't, some prop bet that's going to cash in a week or two. So yeah, just with all the inconsistencies around this division, it definitely makes it hard to look at some of those player props. Um, some of the more exotic markets that you might find out there, similar to what I was mentioning with the exact finish with the Saints, looking at the third place and fourth place finish. That doesn't mean there aren't angles out there. It just might take a little more searching and digging than you typically would in a lot of other divisions.
All right. With that, we will move on to the NFC East division. Before we do that, if you guys can hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And if you really want to support us, you can join our Patreon. The link is in the description down below. So if you do all that, we just appreciate you guys for watching, tuning in. Yeah, thank you all. But yeah, now with that said, we can move on to the best division in football. At least, you know, at least I think so. And that is the NFC East. And we'll start off with the team with the best odds to win it, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are at minus 125 um, to win it. Their over and under win total is set at 11 and a half wins. And we'll take a look back at what they did in 2023. They were 11-6. They were second in the NFC East. They lost in the wild card round to the Bucks. The Eagles, came back to earth, down to earth after their, Super Bowl run that they had in the previous season. They started off great. They were 10-1. Then they just have a complete disaster after that. They completely come apart.
Coming back down to earth is an understatement. That was more like a meteor ripping through the sky and smashing into the ground.
Yeah, they just were awful in the last part of the season. They lost 5 out of the last 6. And Jalen Hurts, it was largely due to Jalen Hurts didn't play well. The defense got exposed. I said the previous season that their defense wasn't as good as everybody was saying it was. And in 2023, everybody saw just how bad that defense was. It was just pretty much a disaster all around for the Eagles in that last part of the season, where basically when they finally got to the playoffs, they basically just gave up. I mean, they gave up and just got their ass kicked by the Bucks.
Very true. And if I'm not mistaken, that was something we were saying going into that playoff game that the Philadelphia Eagles just looked defeated at the end of last season.
And then in this offseason, they did trade away Hassan Reddick. They signed linebacker Bryce Huff. They signed running back Saquon Barkley. They got back safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and they signed Devin White. They did lose DeAndre Swift, running back, safety Kevin Byard, linebacker Nicholas Morrow. And in the draft, they take in the first round Kenyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo, defensive back Cooper DeJean in the round 3 out of Iowa. And in round 3, they take Jalix Hunt, edge out of Houston Christian. I think what we saw last year is the real Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think he's pretty average. And when he forced to make throws, he's not that good. He's not that great. I think their defense hasn't got any better. Yes, they got back their safety, but they lose a big pass rushing piece in Hassan Reddick. The defensive line is not, with all the Georgia players, all the Georgia players that they took, they're all overrated. They haven't done nothing. They haven't shown anything. I don't think that defense got any better. I think it's still as bad as it was last year. So I'm going to fade this team. I don't think they're going to win this division. An 11.5 is laughable to me. The fact that, I don't get it. I don't get why everybody's so high on the Eagles. They lost Jason Kelsey on that line. They ain't gonna be able to do that touch push anymore. I think their offensive line got worse. Their defense isn't any better. 11.5 is way too high for this team, and I am certainly putting a buttload of money to put it on the under at plus 120 because there ain't no chance they're hitting 12 games. I'm just not going to put any money to win the division, and I'm going to put plus 300 for not make the playoffs. So I think that's a great bet for me.
Now, I will disagree on the not to make the playoffs. Now, I'm with you on the under 11.5. That, a number being that high, even with a 17-game schedule and the possibility of an extra win to be grabbed, that seems too high for this team. And you mentioned, I think, a big factor coming into the season, not just the fact that Kelsey retired, but you're talking, the center is the captain of the offensive line. He's the one directing things. He's the one, he's calling out just as many adjustments and changes as the quarterback. It's just not something you notice because of camera angles and, of course, keeping your eyes on the quarterback. But yeah, I do think that is a major factor in basically the offensive line play. And, this is a team that for a few years now has relied on a running back by committee. We saw less of that last year. I may be a little higher on Jalen Hurts than you, but I would not go as far, maybe a top 10 quarterback, but I wouldn't. I know there's a lot of people out there that might put him more in the top 5 range, and I just don't think he's there quite yet. Is it possible, there's some of the pieces there to elevate him to that range? Definitely. You got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. And with that pass, at least, man, if only we had the answers to what happened last year. Because a team that starts 10-1 and then finishes the way that they did, you would assume that there's some serious problems.
And they do have serious problems. You've heard all offseason how the coach and the quarterback don't like each other. Tons of drama between those two. I mean, I don't see any positives going into the season. Like, where's the positive? Like,
yeah, and
I don't see it.
And it's also a possibility that we're seeing this offense schematically still trying to adjust from losing their offensive coordinator 2 years ago. I believe, what was the name? Steichen? Was that the one? Yeah. And clearly we saw,
and I didn't even bring up the fact that they have Kellen Moore, who is a terrible play
caller. Now I gotta agree with you on that one. The addition of, I do not understand the hype behind Kellen Moore. I know you was just happy.
He's terrible. He can't set up plays. He all he does is pass the ball. He runs 4 curls a bunch. It's just he's not a good play caller.
Somebody got to get him out of that Madden playbook.
Exactly. I mean, I don't see anything. I don't see why Vegas has them this high. I don't see why all the analysts are so high on them. With what? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, no. And like I said, for the most part, I'm definitely with you there. I think this team could be a legitimate threat as a wild card team. Just having those 3 wild card spots, they could legitimately be a 9-win team.
Well, I may have
another 10 NFC games East last year.
Take one of those spots.
But yeah, as far as to not make the playoffs, it's hard for me to say no in that instance. But this is definitely not a team I'll be looking to try and take to the Super Bowl or a deep run in the playoffs. Especially with what we saw at the end of last year. They're gonna have to prove me wrong.
We got a question from Ryan. He says, "Hey, fellas, Bijan Robinson will lead the league in rushing yards or total yards."
I think it's a possibility.
I would not. It's a possibility. I wouldn't say.
Yeah,
he's one of the favorites. I wouldn't take him as a favorite to do that.
Well, I don't even think he might be priced as a favorite, just simply because of the number of weapons that already exist in Atlanta. As we were saying last year, I don't know what Arthur Smith was out there doing. Like, literally. Like, I understand maybe using one of your high caliber weapons as a bit of a decoy, but use Kyle Pitts as a decoy for Bijan. Use Drake London as a decoy for Kyle Pitts. Don't use Kyle Pitts as a decoy for Jonnu Smith. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, he said rushing yards or total yards.
I could potentially see rushing yards given what we saw out of him last year.
I would think more rushing yards than total yards, just because they got so many different types of weapons that they can throw to. I don't see him as much of as the receiving option. I think they're just gonna kind of run the hell out of him. But go ahead.
And I was just gonna say it would take a little bit of looking, but I can't recall a running back paired with Kirk Cousins that has been a threat in the passing game
Yeah.
throughout his entire career. And some of that, of course, could be schematics, coaching, but we hear all the time how a quarterback's best friend is basically the tight end and the running back in the flat. And yes, this is possibly. I can't recall if Cousins got to play with Adrian Peterson uh, before the tail end of Peterson's career, but
Maybe.
I would stretch to say that Bijan could be the best running back Cousins has had in the backfield in his entire career.
Over Dalvin Cook.
I mean, we didn't get that much out of Dalvin Cook. Yes, there was a couple years there where he's top of the
Didn't he have
league.
his best years with them?
Yeah, but it was still you're only talking about what was it? Really 2 or 3 years? I know there was one year that was I believe his season got cut way short with injury. And I mean, as you've seen the past, 2 years, it seems like the league's saying he ain't got nothing left in the tank because man can't seem to stay on the team.
Well, I hope that changes since my Cowboys signed him, and that's what we'll get to.
Well, if it don't, y'all still got Zeke.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, is that really anything? All right. We'll get to the Cowboys, and because they do have the second best odds to win the NFC East at plus 185. The over under win total is set at 9.5 wins. We'll go back to 2023 season where they went 12-5, won the NFC East, but they did lose in the wild card round. We're just more of the same old Cowboys doing the same old things, winning 12 games and then losing in the first or the second round of the playoffs. It's just like just like you're watching reruns of the same show. Um, I thought it might be a little bit different last season, considering they did actually make some good moves. They traded for some pieces like Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. You really thought they were trying to go for it last year, and we got the same exact result as always. Just could not get over that playoff hump, and we're back right where we always are. Um, but in the 24 offseason, we barely made any moves because it was a very quiet off season for my Cowboys. But we did add linebacker Eric Kendricks, signed, like you said, Ezekiel Elliott back to the team, and we just signed Linval Joseph as well. We did lose cornerback Stephon Gilmore, tackle Tyron Smith, defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins, defensive end Dante Fowler, running back Tony Pollard, center Tyler Biotish, and defensive end Dorrance Armstrong. In the draft, they take in round 1 Tyler Guyton, tackle out of Oklahoma. In round 2, they take defensive end Marshawn Nealon out of Western Michigan. And in round 3, they take Cooper Beebe, center out of Kansas State, and linebacker Maris Leofow out of Notre Dame. 12-5, 3 years in a row. I don't see why it would change much, considering we have this pretty much the same team. You kind of trade out Stephon Gilmore for Trayvon Diggs coming back. It's basically the same as the secondary. We do improve on the linebackers because we had a safety playing linebacker in Marquise Bell. So I do think we're very much improved on the linebacker position with Eric Kendricks. We get Mike Zimmer. We get rid of Dan Quinn, whose defense could not stop the run. And hopefully, Mike Zimmer can help improve that part. And as far as, we got the same pass rushers, but we still have the weakness in the interior defensive alignment. I think we'll be better in the run blocking standpoint. Cooper Beebe is a much stronger center than Tyler Biadasz was. I think we'll get similar play to, we'll have at least Tyler Guyton more often than we had Tyron Smith. So I think that's a little bit of improvement there on the offensive line. And honestly, I think the running backs are pretty much going to do what Tony Pollard did last year. Tony Pollard wasn't really that good last year. He barely got over 1,000 yards. I think with Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott, I think they can produce just as much as that, and with Rico Dowdle as well. Obviously, it's going to be collective, but honestly, I think it's pretty much going to be the same. Where Dak's going to have to take the bulk of the work, and I think he's going to produce just as well as he did last season. He finished second in the MVP race, and he had really good numbers. I don't see that changing because he had the same receivers there, same tight end. So a lot of it is basically the same with a couple more improvements here and there. So I think that results in another 12-5 season. We may not be great in the playoffs, but I think you're very you feel confident in putting your money down on a team that's at least very consistent when it comes to regular season games, and that's what we're betting on right now is on the regular season. And I think you can count on the Cowboys to make you some money in the regular season. So I'm going to put my money on them. Not all the money, because I'll leave some money for another team, because this team doesn't have repeat winners in the division. So I'll put some money. I'm not going to go full on my Cowboys to win it. But I do like them to go over that 9.5. I think we'll win 12 games again. And I do think we'll make the playoffs as well at in minus 180 for a yes.
Yeah, this is definitely a team, like you said, won a lot of games last year, made it to the playoffs, and it's the same story.
Well, we're not betting on the playoffs.
Painfully
we're betting on regular season. So.
That's a good thing for sure. But yeah, and something I was just looking at, and I know it's a question I've heard a lot this offseason. They were able to get that CeeDee Lamb deal done. Why it took so long? Yeah, definitely a question a lot of people have been asking. One of those reasons people are pointing at, please get Jerry Jones out of there. And I don't blame y'all, because it's been 30 years of nonsense with little to show for it. And another great example of that is, though technically Dak Prescott is under roster or under contract, those are voidable years on the end of it. So there's really no telling what's going to happen with Dak Prescott and his future with this team. And some of those dead cap hit numbers might be staggering at first. But then when you look at the percentage of basically the percentage of the cap that it would be, it's more similar to what you would have saw 2 or 3 years prior to this season, because of things like the collective bargaining agreements, media deal rights coming through, and we keep seeing the salary cap going up. So while some of these numbers, yes, traditionally would be a bit shocking to see, you also got to keep in mind with that, with salary cap going up, 30, 40, 50 mil isn't the same percentage of it that it was even just a year prior. Now, I think it would be a risky move trying to get rid of Dak, just given what it seems like might be coming up through the college ranks, and it'd take a little bit more looking into as far as potential quarterbacks hitting free agency. But that's something you're not going to see in the NFL much more. If you got a quarterback worth a damn, he's going to be under contract. It's that simple. I don't think there's a top quarterback out there not under a multi-year extension or deal. I think the closest you might find is CJ Stroud playing under his rookie contract, depending on how high you want to put him in some conversations. But especially this past season, we saw Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert get extensions, possibly extensions that weren't warranted. But as I said, given the current market with quarterbacks in the NFL, if you got one that's worth a damn, you better hold on to him, because there's somebody out there that's gonna pay him whatever that top dollar price is. Now, you got rid of Kellen Moore. it's going to be interesting to see what potentially this offense can do, because CeeDee Lamb has been almost annually one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL. Now, unfortunately, that wide receiver core has gotten a little bit thin over the past couple of years. Doesn't necessarily take much pressure off of him. If you can get more out of the running game, I definitely think there's more possibilities that you see CeeDee Lamb be able to operate in open space and maybe take advantage of the deep threat. But there's still some questions surrounding this team. And what'd you say the number was at? What are we looking at? 12.5 for the Cowboys?
No, 9.5. It's very low.
9.5. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, a great example. You're seeing 9.5. I'm seeing 10.5 at another book. 9.5. I'd definitely feel more comfortable trying to take the over there. Even in what could turn out to be a tougher division than a lot of people expect this season. Even if it's just the Cowboys and Eagles sitting at the top of that division. It's a little bit of a concern trying to get double-digit wins, especially from the offensive side of the ball. As you said, Dan Quinn's no longer there. Couldn't stop the run last year. There's definitely going to be questions coming into this year. And in the NFL, especially if you're ahead with the lead in a game, you're going to be running the ball. And if the team on the other side can't stop the run, you better hope that you don't get behind in that game, or you're going to have little to none chance of trying to make a comeback, or at least have time to potentially make that comeback. So, that's something that's definitely worth watching out for. Maybe that, it's possible they open the season with a couple wins, maybe we see the Eagles open up with a couple losses, and that be enough to get some line movement out of the Cowboys from a division standpoint. Like I said, the fact that I'm looking at 10.5, I think that's where the number should be, that 9-10 range, because if we're talking about them getting 10 wins, okay, I could see that happening. It might take all 17 games to get there, but I could see that happening. I'm talking about 11 wins. I would definitely be closer to the under in that situation, just because I don't think we're going to see as good a team as we saw last year, and they only got 12 wins last year. So how many more wins, how many less wins could we potentially see? And, one game might not sound a lot, but when you're looking at some of these lines, that's the difference. That's a win or a loss when it comes to his bets. 9.5 over 9.5, you're cashing with 10. Under 10.5, you're cashing at 10. But getting over that 10.5, I think would definitely be a struggle. Now, like I said, I do like the 9.5. Making the playoffs, I definitely think, this is going to be a wild card team. I wouldn't touch them to win the division just because, we don't know. Similar to the NFC South, this is one of those divisions where you don't see back-to-back winners and things of that nature. And it sucks when you don't have some, that level of consistency, or at least, signs that one team or another.
It is consistent that it's never the same. That's what's consistent.
And the only downside to that is you got 3 other teams that could still make that happen. Now, no, I'm not. You're not gonna see me out here putting any division winners on the rest of the NFC East. But
you might be seeing me do that.
But yeah, like I said, as far as to make the playoffs, I definitely think there's a good chance that we are looking at the Cowboys as a wild card team come the end of the season.
All right. We'll move on to the team with the 3rd best odds to win the NFC East, and that is the Washington Commanders. They come in at plus 1,200 to win it, and their over/under win total is set at 6.5. We'll go back to what they did in 2023, and that went 4-13, finished last in the division. They got off to a good 2-0 start. but any excitement for that pretty much quickly dissipated after losing the next 13 out of 15 games. Defense was awful. Their defense was completely terrible. They allowed the most points in the league. They averaged 30 points a game. Yeah, all that heavily was put on Ron Rivera, considering he's a defensive guy. Um, and they fire him and they bring in Dan Quinn as his replacement. But in the offseason, they added a lot of former Cowboys, Dorrance Armstrong, center Tyler Biotish, and Dante Fowler, linebacker Frankie Louvu, running back Austin Eckler, linebacker Bobby Wagner, and safety Jeremy Chin. So, few guys that from both of our teams.
Oh yeah, now Washington, they've been in Carolina, DC for a long time. Now especially during those Ron Rivera years. But yeah, it's a tough team to look at.
Yeah. So, I can just continue. They do lose. They traded away their quarterback Sam Howell. They signed. They lost tackle Sean Ridgway. They also traded away. And they in the draft they took in round one, second overall quarterback Jaden Daniels out of LSU. And round two they take tackle Jersey Newton out of Illinois. And round two they take cornerback Mike Sanders still out of Michigan. And another round two pick, they took tight end Ben Sennett out of Kansas State. And round three, they take tackle Brandon Coleman out of TCU. The Commanders made a lot of improvements to their team, especially on the defensive side. You saw how many, the good pass rushers, Dorrance Armstrong and Bobby Wagner and Jeremy Chin and all those guys, Frankie Louvu especially. So I definitely think their defense will get better. I think Dan Quinn makes pretty much immediate impacts on when he comes to the team, and then he kind of tails off as the years go by. But I do think he makes quick impacts, and I think he'll make a quick impact to this defense, and I do think they will be better. They have a similar circumstances to what Texans did last year. They had the second overall pick, who they take a quarterback with a defensive head coach. And they have some talent. They have a talented receiver and Terry McLaurin. They got probably the best running back position group out in the division with Eckler, Robinson, and those guys. So I like what they have around Jaden Daniels, where I think he does have a good place to have success. Like I said, no repeat division winner. So the money I said I would be holding off, this is the team I'm going to put it on. I think they have a better chance than either the Eagles or the Giants to win it. I think they can have immediate success and surprise some people. And that's why I'm definitely going to take the over. The 6.5 wins is at plus 300 to make the playoffs, and I do think they will get that wild card spot if they don't win the division outright. So yeah, I'm really high on this team. I like this team. I think they definitely got and definitely made some big improvements. Just Dan Quinn himself coming there, I think it's a big improvement to what they had. So I think they can. I think they, there's always these teams that go from last to first. It happens like every single year. I think this team could be that team that does that worst to first thing.
Well, now I can't get behind you on that one. I definitely think we see them win more games than we saw than last year. A lot of major roster turnover. Now, I do like your comparison with the Houston Texans. The only real difference I see between the two from, Commanders this year and Texans last year, that offensive coordinator. I mean, it seems to be a hot commodity out there. Now, I think, this year could definitely show whether that was warranted or not. Do we see, Texans have the same offense that we saw last year, especially with pieces added that should bolster that offense. But it will be exciting to see what Jalen Daniels can do out there. I don't have it up in front of me, but something that I did come across that I found noticeable, a very low rushing total for a quarterback that we could see on the run a lot, whether that be through designed runs, broken plays, pass coverage breakdowns. Um, and, we saw it through the college years. His ability to run, his willingness to run. Now, I think there are serious questions you got to ask yourself. Do we see what, basically took out Anthony Richardson last year, where he was plagued by injury? Now, of course, you're talking about a different player when you get into the physical stature wise and, body type. But it's still the NFL. Even the biggest ones out there can get hurt taking a pop. Jalen Daniels definitely ain't no Anthony Richardson as far as size. So I would have some mild concerns when it comes to him being involved with the rushing game. But yeah, I think he's a talented quarterback that could easily get a couple more wins just by being on the team. I definitely have to lean to that over. Now, something that I did come across that I find just slightly disrespectful as a Panthers fan. Washington is minus 110 to finish fourth in the division. The Giants are minus 115 to finish fourth in the division. Like, what the hell's going on? We got a battle for fourth and we got a battle for first. Now, like I said, that's just insulting to me as a Panthers fan. But that is a conversation for another day. But yes, I definitely wouldn't be looking for the Commanders to finish fourth in this division. Hell, you're looking at a pretty juicy plus 260 if they finish in third. And honestly, even if you feel like my man Caleb here in the possibility of them winning the division or something of that nature, you could almost play all three positions, then finish third, second, and first, because you're looking at plus 260 to finish third, plus 425 for second, and plus 600 for first. So, you sprinkle around a little bit of money at the right amount, you might be able to, make a plus, a profit regardless of which one of those three hit. Because I don't see this team finishing in last place. Now they might not be it might not be a pretty team to watch throughout the season.
No, even if they're bad, I think they're going to be better than our next team we're going to talk about.
Unfortunately, that's my opinion as well. Don't hate me, Ferris, but when money's on the line, we got to be real about it. I ain't out here trying to donate to charity.
All right. Well, we'll get to that team, and that is Ferris's New York Football Giants, with the worst odds to win the NFC East at plus 2,000. Their over under win total is set the same as Washington's at 6.5. I'll take a look back what they did in 2023. They went 6-11, third in the NFC East, did not make the playoffs. Straight out the gate, the Giants knew this was not going to be a good season when they got their ass kicked by my Cowboys in week 1. It didn't get really any better from there on. They had a little bit of spark with old what's his name? The quarterback. Can't even remember his name. The third string, Tommy DeVito.
Oh yeah, Tommy Cutlass.
Yeah, they had a little bit of fun with that during their season. Put a little smile on the Giants' face with the
feed the fans a little food since they couldn't give them any victories in their belly.
Yeah. But that was really the only upside to their season. Otherwise, it was pretty miserable for them. Considering they had gone to the playoffs and won a playoff game the previous season, just to come right back down and finish with a 6-11 record. Just pretty disappointing season overall for the New York Giants. But in the offseason, they did trade for your guy Brian Burns. They signed a guard John Runyon, running back Devin Singletary, tackle Jermaine Illuminor, and quarterback Drew Lock. They did lose their best offensive weapon, running back Saquon Barkley, safety Xavier McKinney, defensive end Ashawn Robinson, quarterback Tyrod Taylor, receiver Sterling Shepard, and defensive end Jahad Ward. In the draft, they take in round one receiver Malik Neighbors out of LSU. They take in round two safety Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, and in round three they take Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. But yeah, I have like we just said, I have no faith in this Giants team, and I especially have no faith because of who their quarterback is, and that is one Daniel Jones. He is awful. He is terrible. There's nothing good about him, and on top of that, he's coming back off a season-ending injury. So that's even worse for him. I mean, this offensive line has gotten no better. I mean, they made moves to try to sign this and that guy. Didn't matter. The offensive line still sucks. He's still gonna get, you know, Daniel Jones is not gonna be safe behind that line, which makes their receiver pick in the first round basically null and void because he's not going to be able to get out to his routes because Daniel Jones is going to be running for his life. Yeah, their offense is going to be no better, especially because their offense just left to the Eagles, which was Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was their offense, and now they don't have him. There's nothing there. There's nothing there to be happy about because, yeah, you got Malik Neighbors, but he's going to have no time, to get out to down the field behind this offensive line. And the one thing that they got going is their front seven. The front seven looks pretty good. But that's one thing that they do got going for them. But their secondary is still awful. Like, I mean, their safeties are awful. Their corners are awful. That whole secondary is a complete mess. So unless they get a sack on every play, that front seven is really not going to be able to do much there. So yeah, I mean, this team is going to be bad. I'm going to take the under big time, even if it's at six. It's the win total set at 6.5. No chance of winning this division, and I'm going to say hell no to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. This is a team that fade all the way through the regular season. Most definitely looking to take the under on their total wins. I was curious to see maybe you'd be able to find a last place finisher market, or to have the number one overall pick next season. I was curious to see what their odds might be. Because we could be potentially be talking about one of the worst teams in the NFL when it's all said and done. And, yes, they did add a few pieces on both sides of the ball. But as you said, when you have major issues at a position like quarterback with Daniel Jones, can't even call him Danny Dimes no more because if you change that out, you're only getting 8 pennies in return. They brought in Brian Burns, who, I like Downing, his time in Carolina, though I do feel like he underperformed. Would have loved to see, the prior regime, maybe get those 2 first-round picks for him, but that's another separate argument. But yes, having proper, Brian Burns did his best work when he had Hassan Reddick on the other side from him. And I think the pieces in New York definitely lean to the possibility of him having a better season. Now, that may not equate directly to stats, but at least from the overall perspective of the defense, as you said, this front seven could be pretty dangerous out there. The only problem is all you got to do is throw the ball up in the air, and it's damn near guaranteed touchdown with the secondary. And that's just the issue that if it's not corrected, I mean, that's how you're going to lose games, and it's just that simple. You hear coaches preach about it all the time. You get a team in the 3rd and long, you don't give up that first down. Well, when you can't stop the pass, it doesn't matter if it's 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 13. there's still a legitimate threat that the offense on the field can go out there and get that first down. And not being able to make third down stops in situations like that, it easily leads to your defense being drained, um, drives staying alive, running longer, whether it's running time off the clock, giving up field position, or even leading directly to points. Um, that's just you got to be able to get off the field on third downs, and if you have a stout front seven that is going out there and doing their thing, first and second down, maybe not necessarily creating lost yardage, but like I said, if you got a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and you can't get off the field, that is a recipe for disaster, and it's going to be difficult for them Giants fans out there. I hope they got some Cutlass in the freezer still. Maybe they can thaw them out, heat them up and have us. But if Danny Dimes is that cornerback, I don't like I don't like what's going on in New York. Um, hell, Drew Lock, I believe, went to New York because Daniel Jones is the quarterback. A guy that hadn't been able to gain a lick of traction anywhere was like, yeah, let me go over here because they running this guy out there still.
Yeah.
So, I do like Malik Neighbors at the wide receiver position. Uh, unfortunately, not having a quarterback that can reliably get you the ball, that's going to be an issue. Now, was this a draft pick that potentially, could we see the Giants try and move on from Jones in the next year or two? Definitely a possibility. So it might be worth keeping an eye on, what quarterbacks are coming out in the next year or two, because that first round pick, you still have the 5th round option for a player like Neighbors. So it is possible that, even in a year or two, we're talking about the Giants still having 2-3 usable years on Neighbors' contract. But as far as this year, I don't see it leading to much. He's definitely a player you could look at to potentially fade total or overall receiving yardage, number of receptions, touchdowns, because you got to actually get the ball in your hand to accomplish any of those. And I'm just not sure that's the case. And I was even double checking. Yeah, something I already had to put down. Malik Neighbors under 900, basically 900 and a half yards, so right at 900. But even the books had the under minus 115. Um, so yeah, I do not see this passing game being able to produce, and that's going to lead to a lot of L's on the season, unfortunately.
Yep, rough times ahead for the New York Giants. So, basically don't put your money on them to win very many games. But that will wrap up the NFC East, and that will wrap up this show, and that will wrap up our futures betting of the off season. I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in for all these episodes. I definitely appreciate you for watching. But for now, we will be back to our regular scheduled time on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock, giving you our 5 best bets of the weekend every single week, all the way up to the Super Bowl. So we'll be doing that. And like we all said, we're just trying to make you guys money. That is the goal of the show. And we will be doing that this NFL season. But as for now, you can tell everybody where they can find you, DWeezy.
Yes, the good folks out there can find me at Backyard Action Media here on YouTube and at the Yard Bets. The weather tried to stop me today, couldn't let it happen. We're coming back for the regular season strong. Like I said, we got football Thursday, Friday. You got college kicking off. You got, of course, football on Sunday and Monday Night Football all coming back into our schedules. People gonna feel all warm and fuzzy inside seeing that NFL on this big screen.
All right. So let's get ready for week 1 of the NFL season, and let's get ready to make that money.